The discovery. The human child floated through the cold emptiness of space, clinging to a twisted fragment of what had once been a ship. The stars glimmered like distant fires, and the silence pressed against the child like a heavy blanket. The human shivered and coughed air that was too thin and cold, cutting through the chest, every sound muffled by the void around them. And yet even in this terrifying emptiness, the child did not cry. Instead, the small hands gripped the jagged edge of metal with a strength that surprised even themselves, because humans were supposed to be fragile creatures, weak and soft. But this human had survived where none should have, and somewhere in the distance a scouting vessel from the Valorians curved silently through the dark, their sensors picking up life forms that were unexpected because humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. The family aboard the ship was a curious and powerful one, known across several systems for adopting and training beings of other worlds, but never before had they encountered a human, a creature that their data said was frail and ill-suited for survival in the harshness of space. The leader of the family, a tall being with iridescent skin and eyes that could see beyond normal spectrums, leaned closer to the monitors and studied the tiny human clinging to the wreckage. The human's heartbeat was erratic but steady, and there was something in the movement that spoke of resilience, curiosity, and a spark that even advanced aliens could not ignore. The council aboard the ship whispered among themselves, debating whether this human was worth saving, because on one hand, humans were untested, untrained, and unpredictable, but on the other there was a gleam of something ancient, something raw in the human that felt powerful and alive. The ship descended carefully, weaving through debris, and the human watched with wide eyes, a mixture of fear and fascination, as the strange shapes approached the wreckage. No one had ever come to save them, and yet now beings with smooth skin and limbs too long to be comfortable extended tendrils to lift the human from the cold metal. The child screamed at first, but the sound was muffled by the pressurized suit of the rescuer, and then the fear gave way to trust, instinctively sensing that these creatures were not going to harm them. The child let go and felt the sudden warmth of a protective grip that somehow reminded them of home. Even though home was gone, the metal fragment floated away into the void, leaving the human suspended between life and death. The aliens carried the child aboard their ship, and the small room where the human was placed smelled strange, yet comforting in a way that human senses could not fully describe. The family gathered to observe the human. Some touched their instruments in fascination, while others simply stared in awe. The child's eyes followed every movement, alert to everything, yet calm in a way that humans rarely were calm. They asked questions in a language that had no words, yet somehow conveyed emotion and intelligence, and the aliens could sense that the human was learning faster than expected, even without formal instruction. The leader looked down at the child and said without speaking that this creature might be fragile, but there was an unseen strength that could change expectations. As the ship moved through the galaxy, the humans slept, finally letting go of the tension that had held them for so long. The aliens watched over them, intrigued by every twitch of a finger, every breath, every flutter of the eyelids, because humans were not supposed to endure what they had endured, and yet this one had survived against all odds. The stars outside, the viewport blurred as the ship accelerated, but inside, the warmth and protection of the alien family surrounded the human with possibilities and questions, the kind that only new beginnings could bring. The human would not yet understand the life that awaited them, the challenges, the wonders, the danger, and the moments of joy that would come with being the only human among aliens. But for the first time since the crash, they felt safe. The leader turned to the others and said that this human would stay with them. The decision unanimous and yet unspoken, for everyone sensed it. This small being was more than they appeared, a symbol of resilience, an unexpected spark in a galaxy that had never truly known humanity. The child slept, unaware of the monumental change about to unfold in their life, a life that would teach the aliens as much as they would teach the human, and that spark in the human's chest glimmered faintly, even in sleep, like the tiny fire of a new beginning. The adoption, the human woke to a room filled with strange colors and shapes that seemed alive and shifting. Their eyes widened as they tried to comprehend the strange beings surrounding them. The alien family hovered close, observing every movement and reaction, The human blinked and slowly realized that they were no longer alone. The fear that had gripped them for so long began to fade, replaced by a cautious curiosity. The aliens spoke in soft tones, their voices melodic and soothing, though the human could not understand the words. There was a meaning in the vibrations and the way the air moved that conveyed safety and welcome. One of the aliens extended a long, slender hand, and the human hesitated, but then reached forward, instinctively touching the warmth that radiated from the skin. The connection sparked a strange sense of belonging, as if for the first time the human was not just surviving but being seen as more than a fragile creature. The family gathered around, offering objects and gestures, designed to teach the human their ways. And though the child struggled to grasp the meanings, their mind worked quickly. Piecing together patterns and intentions, the aliens watched in astonishment at how fast the human adapted, their instincts keen, their senses sharp, their mind eager to learn. Meals came in forms the human had never imagined, but hunger was hunger, and the child ate with a determination that impressed the aliens. They had been told humans were weak, but here was a being who could endure and even thrive when given the simplest of sustenance. The human's laughter echoed softly in the chamber, a sound so alien yet pure that the family felt an unexpected warmth deep within their chests. The leader smiled inwardly, knowing that they had made a choice that could ripple across worlds, because this human had the potential to grow in ways no one could yet foresee. Days passed, and the human learned to navigate the ship, moving with small, careful steps that grew bolder with each attempt. They touched instruments and levers, experimenting and testing boundaries. The aliens allowed the human freedom because they sensed that growth came from challenge and exploration, not confinement. The human began to imitate movements. The aliens made building strength and coordination in ways that were both fascinating and entertaining. The family's younger members tried to teach games and customs, and the human responded with ingenuity, adding twists and variations that left the aliens in awe. Communication was still a struggle, but understanding began to form through gestures, expressions, and shared experiences. The human discovered joy in simple things and fear in the unknown. But each moment of discovery strengthened the bond with the alien family. The leader watched closely, recognizing that the human was developing not only skills but also confidence and the courage to face challenges that no one had anticipated. The family's initial curiosity turned to genuine affection, a rare thing among their kind, and yet the human inspired it effortlessly. One evening, as the ship glided past a nebula, the human sat among the family, looking out at the swirls of color and light. The child's thoughts drifted to home. Though they barely remembered it, there was a longing to belong, and the realization slowly settled that this strange alien family might be the home they had been seeking. The aliens sensed the contemplation and offered comfort in ways words could not convey, embracing the human as one of their own. And in that moment, a silent promise formed that no matter the dangers that awaited in the galaxy, this human would not face them alone. The human's heart swelled with a strange mixture of pride and fear, knowing that life would never be simple yet. Feeling the strength of the family around them, the aliens were beginning to understand that the human's resilience was not a mere quirk, but a core part of their being, something that could challenge assumptions and redefine the limits of what they thought possible in the galaxy. The human would grow and learn in ways neither they nor the aliens could yet imagine, and the first threads of trust and love wove themselves into a bond that would carry them through trials that lay ahead. The decision to adopt the human was no longer tentative. It was certain the child belonged to this family in a way that transcended species and expectations. The journey ahead would be filled with wonder and danger, and the human would face it with courage and ingenuity that would leave the galaxy surprised and forever changed. Lessons of strength. The alien family watched with increasing fascination as the human continued to adapt to life. Among them, they had expected the child to struggle for far longer to fit in, but each day the human seemed to grow stronger, more confident, and more capable. It was not just in physical tasks, but in how the human began to see the world. The way they interacted with the technology the aliens used was different yet effective. There was a creativity in the human's approach, an ingenuity that was unlike anything the aliens had seen before. The leader of the family watched as the human solved a problem that had stumped them for days. The task had been simple enough on the surface, but it involved intricate work with alien materials that required precision and understanding of alien systems. When the human stepped forward, the family members had expected failure. Instead, they watched in awe as the child used methods that were unfamiliar yet brilliant. The human's hands moved with purpose and precision, and the solution came, as naturally as breathing. Other aliens began to notice the human's growing abilities, and some were skeptical. They had never trusted the stories about humans, always assuming that the tales of their strength and cunning were exaggerated. But the more they watched, the more they realized that humans were capable of far more than anyone had imagined. The human's resilience was not just physical, it was mental as well. They had adapted to this alien world with an ease that made the family's own members marvel at the child's resourcefulness. Despite their growing respect for the human's abilities, some of the alien families were still doubtful. They saw humans as weak, fragile beings, incapable of surviving in the harsh environments of the galaxy. But those who spent more time with the child began to change their minds. They saw the human push themselves harder than any other species had ever done before, in situations that would have broken lesser beings. The human persevered. One day, the family gathered to face a challenge that none of them had anticipated. An alien warband arrived near the family's territory. Their ships massive and ominous as they entered the star system, the alien family immediately prepared for battle. But there was a sense of dread among them. This was a threat unlike anything they had ever encountered. The warband was known for their brutality and ruthlessness. The human stood among them, unsure of what was to come, but not afraid. They had seen combat in their short life before. The humans were often caught in wars and violence, but they had learned from the best in the galaxy how to adapt, how to think outside the box, how to survive against overwhelming odds. The human was not just a passive member of the family anymore. They had earned their place among them through action and intellect. The family members geared up for the conflict, each knowing their role, but all eyes turned to the human, who was not trained in the way the aliens fought. But there was something about the child's calm focus in the face of danger that was unmistakable. The human did not panic, did not hesitate. Their mind was already racing for strategies that others would not think of. They knew that victory did not come from sheer strength alone. It came from thinking differently, from pushing limits. When the alien warband attacked, the human moved quickly, weaving between the larger and stronger aliens, using their quick thinking and small frame to outmaneuver the attackers. It wasn't long before the warband realized they were not dealing with an easy target. The human surprised them with tactics that had never been used before, methods that relied on misdirection and precision rather than brute force. The battle was long and grueling, the warband relentless. But the alien family and the human fought together with a coordination that was unmatched. The human proved time and time again that the strength of their mind could match the physical prowess of even the strongest aliens. Their courage was not just in their ability to fight, but in their willingness to face impossible odds and push through the fear that paralyzed others. When the battle was over, the warband was defeated, and the alien family stood victorious, but it was the human who had turned the tide of the conflict with their unconventional strategies and quick thinking. The family was in awe of what they had witnessed. They had underestimated the human, and now they knew that humanity was a force to be reckoned with in the galaxy. The human had earned their place not by being the strongest or the most skilled in combat, but by proving that strength could be found in creativity and resilience, and in the courage to face the impossible. The family's respect for the human had grown beyond admiration. It had turned into something deeper, something that was more than just trust. It was recognition of a power that came from the heart and mind of a creature who had shown them all that strength came in many forms, and the human had just begun to show them what they were capable of. The first challenge. The galaxy was a vast and chaotic place, and even in the safety of their ship, the alien family could not escape the dangers that lurked in the depths of space. Their peaceful existence was shattered one day when an unknown threat appeared on their sensors, a shadow passing through the stars too quickly and too quietly to be anything less than troubled. First, the family had no idea what was coming their way. The readings on the ship's monitors were faint but ominous. A ship of unknown origin, moving fast and weaving through the nebulae like a predator, stalking its prey, The human had grown accustomed to the quiet hum of the ship and the routine of daily life. But now they felt something had shifted, a tension that lingered in the air. The family began preparations, moving with a calm but practiced urgency. It was the leader who noticed the subtle changes in the human. The child who had grown in skill and confidence now stood at the edge of the control room, staring at the screens intently, their hands clutching the edge of a console for balance. The human's eyes reflected the same understanding of danger, the same focus that had saved them all before. The alien family had always assumed that humans were incapable of handling real threats. But now they were seeing a side of the child they had not expected. "Are you afraid?" One of the younger aliens asked, their voice a gentle hum of curiosity. The human looked over and met their eyes. The child's face was calm, but there was a fire burning beneath the surface. "No," the human replied, simply the word, carrying a weight of finality that caught the younger alien off guard. In that moment, the leader understood the human's true strength. It wasn't the physical prowess that mattered, nor was it the alien skills. That they had learned, it was something deeper. A raw instinct, a will to survive that drove the human far beyond the limits of what any of them had expected. The alien warband that had attacked them before was nothing compared to this new threat. The readings on the ship's sensors now showed a fleet of ships much larger and more powerful than the alien family could have anticipated. The leader issued orders to prepare for a full-scale defense. But there was no guarantee that even with all their advanced technology they would be able to hold off the incoming onslaught. The human stood ready. The family could sense the shift in them, a change that had come over the child, as if they had grown into a force of nature, something beyond what had once been just a survivor. Now they were a protector, a warrior capable of standing beside the family and fighting, not just for survival, but for victory. As the enemy ships approached, the leader took a deep breath and turned to the human. "Stay close and follow my lead," they said with a firm voice. The human nodded silently, but the resolve in their eyes was unmistakable. The battle began as the fleet moved closer. The human could feel the tension building in the air. Every muscle in their body was on alert. But they did not falter. They watched the movements of the enemy ships, analyzing their patterns with the same quick thinking that had saved them. Before, this was not just about fighting. It was about using what they had learned to outsmart the enemy, to turn their strength into a weakness. The human took a step forward and took control of a system that none of the aliens had thought to use. It was a risk, but it was the only chance they had left. Without hesitation, they activated the system, using the alien technology in a way that it had never been used before. With a few swift adjustments, they redirected the fleet's attack paths, forcing them into a narrow range where the family could target them more effectively. The enemy fleet was taken off guard by the sudden shift in tactics. They had expected a traditional fight with brute force, but the human strategy was anything but traditional. The family joined in the attack with a newfound respect for the human's ingenuity. The battle was intense and brutal, but in the end it was the humans' quick thinking and creative use of alien technology that turned the tide in their favor. The enemy ships, disoriented and outmaneuvered, were slowly forced into retreat. The alien family stood in stunned silence as they watched the last of the enemy fleet retreat into the darkness of space. The human had done what no one else thought possible. They had not only survived, but they had given the family the chance to win. The leader looked over at the human and saw the pride in their eyes. The child had once been an outsider, but now they were a true member of the family. The bond between them had solidified. In the heat of battle, the human was no longer just the child they had adopted. They were a warrior, a protector, someone who had earned their place among the stars. As the ship drifted through the aftermath of the battle, the human stood at the edge of the control room once more, looking out at the vastness of space, their heart pounding, but their mind at peace. They had faced the impossible and come out victorious. But in the quiet of that moment, they realized something far more important than any victory. The galaxy had no idea what was coming, and humanity would be the one to show them rising respect. The battle had been a turning point, not only for the human, but for the entire galaxy. Word of the human's tactics spread faster than anyone could have imagined. The stories of the child, who had turned a losing battle into a resounding victory, began circulating across the stars. At first it was just a whisper, a rumor in the undercurrents of intergalactic communications, But soon the message reached every corner of the galaxy. Humanity was not to be underestimated. The humans stood with the alien family as their ship sailed through the vastness of space, each of them absorbed by the stories that now poured in from across the galaxy. The alien family had always been known for their impressive feats, their reputations solid and respected, but now they had become the center of attention for something completely unexpected. Humanity had become an enigma, a force that no one could ignore. The human felt the shift within themselves too. The initial fear of being out of place among the aliens was gone. Now they felt like a part of something, bigger, something that reached beyond just survival. It was a strange new feeling of belonging, but it was tempered by the growing weight of what this recognition meant. They had saved the family and protected the ship, but now they were becoming something much more than an outsider. They were becoming a symbol of something humanity had never shown before, the strength of their mind and spirit. Aliens who had once looked down on the humans began to change their tuned stories of the humans. Bravery spread to other families. Other species, some respected them, others feared them, but none dared to dismiss them anymore. It was said that no one had ever fought like a human before, that their ability to adapt under pressure was unmatched, and their strength of character, something that could not be replicated. But with recognition came not only respect, but envy as well. The humans soon found themselves at the center of debates and discussions that went far beyond their adopted family. Other factions and alien races began to question the wisdom of letting such a powerful force go unchecked. They knew that humanity could not remain isolated in their corner of the galaxy much longer. The human had been a symbol of hope for some, but for others they were a ticking time bomb, an unknown element that could shake the foundations of the galaxy's power. Balanced, the alien family watched as the human began to change in response to this growing attention. The child had once been full of innocence and curiosity, but now they had begun to see the dangers that came with power. Despite the challenges ahead, the human remained focused. They had no intention of becoming a pawn in anyone's game. They had learned that strength was not just about fighting or winning battles, it was about keeping their integrity, about not losing sight of what they had fought for in the first place. One day an invitation came from a distant planet, a meeting with an alien leader who had heard the stories of the human and wanted to speak with them. The invitation was a formal one, but the tension in the air was thick. The human knew that this was no ordinary meeting. It was a chance for the galaxy to see them up close, to understand the power that lay beneath their humanity. The family prepared the human for the meeting, making sure they understood the stakes. The leader of the alien family spoke with calm authority, reminding the human that they were not just a representative of their family anymore. They were a representative of humanity, and what they said or did would echo throughout the galaxy. When the human arrived on the distant planet, they were greeted by a council of alien leaders, their faces unreadable but their eyes full of curiosity and wariness. The human stood tall among them, their body language confident but not arrogant, their mind sharp and focused. They had faced challenges before, but this meeting was different. It was a test of humanity's place in the galaxy. The alien leaders spoke of peace and cooperation, but there was an underlying tension in the air. The human listened carefully, understanding that they were not there just to speak on behalf of their family, but to represent something much larger, something that had the potential to change everything. As the meeting progressed, the humans' calm and level-headed responses surprised the council. They spoke of humanity's strengths, not just in war, but in creativity, adaptability, and the ability to rise to any challenge when given the chance. The council's members exchanged looks of disbelief. Some were beginning to see the human as something more than just a curiosity. They saw them as a potential ally, a force for change in the galaxy. By the time the meeting concluded, the respect the human had earned was undeniable. Their place in the galaxy was now secured, not as an outsider, not as a symbol of weakness, but as a respected being who had proven their worth in ways that no one could deny. Humanity had shown the galaxy what they were capable of, and now they were no longer a question, but a force to be reckoned with. As the human returned to the ship, the weight of the moment settled on them. They were no longer just a child adopted by an alien family. They were someone whose actions had affected the course of history, and with that came a sense of responsibility. They had a role to play in the galaxy, and they would face whatever came next with the same courage that had carried them this far. The ultimate test. The news came quietly at first like a whisper across the galaxy, but it spread with frightening speed. An event of catastrophic proportions was on the horizon, a celestial storm, unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. A massive asteroid field was set to collide with several star systems, including the home of the alien family. The event was not just a natural disaster, it was a chance for the galaxy to face its darkest fear. The possibility that even the mightiest forces in the universe could be rendered powerless in the face of such an unstoppable force. The alien family had always prided themselves on their technological superiority and their ability to navigate the dangers of space with ease, but this was different. This was beyond their capacity to control a cosmic event of this magnitude. Could not be stopped by any ship or weapon they had, no matter how advanced, and yet the galaxy's leaders expected them to try. They expected their best and brightest to find a way to avert disaster. The human listened intently as the news reached them, a deep sense of unease growing within them. They had faced dangers before, but this was something different. This was a threat that no one could fight with strength or technology alone. It was a challenge of survival, a test of resilience and ingenuity, and the human knew that this would be their greatest test yet. The alien family had gathered to discuss their strategy. The leaders of various species met to discuss possible solutions, but no matter what they came up with, none of their plans seemed adequate. The storm was too powerful, the odds too overwhelming. There was no plan that could guarantee success, and yet the human remained, calm, watching the discussions unfold without fear or hesitation. They had seen death before they had seen destruction, but they had also seen hope and the ability to rise above the impossible. It was then that the leader turned to the human, their eyes steady and full of purpose. "We have tried everything we know," they said, "but there may be a way that only you can see, something no one else has thought of." The human looked back at them with a quiet determination. There was no fear in their eyes, only a resolve that matched the situation. They knew that this would be their moment to prove once and for all what humanity was capable of, and they could feel the weight of the galaxy pressing down on them, as if the future of countless lives rested on their shoulders. With no time to waste, the human went to work. The family watched closely as the human began to process the data, calculating the trajectory of the asteroids and the precise timing of the collision. They knew the solution would not be found in brute force or technological superiority. It would require something different, something that could not be solved by any alien race alone. It would require a human touch, the kind of thinking that could see beyond the limits of what others thought was possible. The human worked tirelessly, using both their instinct and intellect. They saw patterns where others saw chaos, and slowly a plan began to take shape. It was unorthodox and risky, but it was the only chance they had left. The human had realized that the asteroid field could not be destroyed or avoided, but it could be redirected using the gravitational forces of nearby planets to alter the trajectory and shift the course of the storm. The family was hesitant at first. They had never attempted anything so dangerous, but they trusted the human and their instincts. The plan was set into motion. The human stood at the helm of the ship, guiding the family through the dangerous process. They worked together, calculating the exact moment when the gravitational forces could be used to push the asteroid field off its deadly path. Every second counted as the human calculated with precision and speed. The storm was coming fast, and the human's plan was their last hope. The alien family worked as a team to execute the plan, and for the first time in ages, the human felt a strange sense of connection with the galaxy, as if they were part of something much larger, something that transcended species and boundaries. They had always been an outsider, but now they were a part of this family, this mission, and this fight for survival. As the ship moved into position, the human felt the tension rise. Their heart pounded in their chest, but they did not falter. They had learned from the best. They had faced the impossible before, and they would do so again. And just as the asteroid field came into range, The humans' plan was put into action. The gravitational forces were triggered, and with a massive surge of energy, the asteroid field began to shift slowly at first, then faster and faster as the storm changed course. For a long moment, there was silence. The human held their breath, not knowing if the plan would work or if they had failed. But then, the screens lit up, showing the asteroid field moving away from the planets in the path of destruction. The human had done it. They had saved the galaxy from certain doom. The alien family stood in awe as the magnitude of what had just happened sank, and the human had done what no one else could have done. They had saved millions of lives, not through power or brute force, but through creativity, resilience, and an unyielding will to survive. The leader turned to the human, and for the first time, since they had met the child, there was no hesitation in their voice as they said, "You have proven what we all feared but never understood about humanity. Your strength lies not just in what you can do, but in what you believe is possible." Acceptance and legacy. The galaxy had changed forever, but so had the human. What had begun as an improbable survival had blossomed into something more remarkable than anyone could have predicted. The asteroid field had been redirected, and with it, the human had proven that humanity was not just a race of fragile creatures. They had proven that humanity had the strength, resilience, and creativity to overcome even the impossible. The stories of their actions spread like wildfire, from the furthest reaches of the known galaxy to places where humanity had never even been heard of. But with victory came reflection. The human stood now looking out at the stars from the ship's viewing deck, feeling the weight of everything they had accomplished. The alien family had gathered behind them, a quiet but supportive presence, understanding more than ever the immense journey this small being had undertaken. The human had come into their lives as an outsider, an enigma, a fragile child stranded among creatures who had seen eons of history. Now, they were the backbone of the family, the one who had saved them all and altered the course of the galaxy. Yet despite all the praise, the human felt a strange, lingering feeling of loss. They had once been a child of Earth, an innocent among the stars, uncertain of their place in the universe. Now, they had become something else entirely. A hero, a symbol of humanity's untapped power, and a figurehead of change. But with all the new responsibilities came the understanding that they were no longer just a child. They had grown, adapted, and fought in ways no one had ever believed possible. And the cost of that growth was the loss of something simpler, the feeling of being truly at home. The leader of the alien family approached, their eyes filled with wisdom and understanding. "You've earned your place here, not by strength alone, but by the power of your spirit. You've proven to us all what humanity is capable of, and you've made us believe in the impossible." The human nodded silently, their gaze still fixed on the distant stars. There was no denying the truth in the leader's words. The galaxy had seen them as nothing more than a curiosity, a fragile being among the vastness of the cosmos. Now, they were seen as a force to be reckoned with, a symbol of what humanity could do when pushed to the limit. But despite all the victories, the human's heart ached for the Earth they had once known. The family members gathered around, each one offering their own words of encouragement, their pride in the human evident. "You have changed everything," one said. "Not just for us, but for the entire galaxy. You've shown that humanity's place in the stars is earned, not given." The human took a deep breath, their mind drifting back to Earth. It had been years since they had seen it, since they had felt the warmth of the sun on their face or the ground beneath their feet. The Earth was a memory now, distant and fading, but it was still there, a part of them, a reminder of the journey that had brought them here. But as they stood with their alien family, the human realized that home wasn't just a place. It was the people who accepted you, who stood by you when the world was crashing down, and who loved you for who you were, not what you had been. They had come from different worlds, different experiences, but they had forged a bond that was stronger than any starship or weapon. They had become a family, and the human was no longer an outsider. The leader placed a hand on the human's shoulder, their touch comforting and steady. "We may not share your memories of Earth, but we've seen the strength of your heart. You are not alone anymore. You are home with us." A quiet smile tugged at the humans' lips. They had been afraid of losing themselves in this new life, of forgetting where they had come from, but now they understood that they didn't have to choose between Earth and the stars. They could carry both with them, and in doing so, they had created a new future for humanity. As the stars stretched out before them, the human looked back at the family who had taken them in, who had helped them grow, and who had shown them the true meaning of strength. They knew now that no matter where their journey took them, they would always have a place among the stars, among those who saw them not as weak or fragile, but as a force of nature. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, but that was a mistake they would not make again. And the human, standing tall among their alien family, knew that they were just the beginning of what humanity would become. The future was wide open, and with it came the promise of endless possibilities, challenges, and victories. The human turned back to the family, their heart full, and with quiet determination they spoke. "This is just the beginning. We have so much more to show them." And with that, the journey continued. The galaxy watched in silence as the humans stood among the stars. Their journey from fragile child to galaxy-shaping force had been long and tumultuous, but the human had proven that even in the vastness of space, one being could change everything. Their family had stood by them, through every challenge, through every test of strength and character. And now the human was no longer just an adopted child. They were a symbol of humanity's untapped potential, a force no longer to be ignored. The human had found their place in the cosmos, not by brute force or superior technology, but by their sheer will, their resilience, and their ability to adapt to the unknown. They had once been lost adrift in space without purpose. Now they had a purpose that was bigger than they could have ever imagined. They had forged their own destiny, and in doing so they had earned the respect of beings who had once looked at them with doubt and fear. The human had not only proven humanity's strength, but had redefined what it meant to be strong. The journey ahead was still unknown, but one thing was certain. The human would face it with the same courage and ingenuity that had carried them this far. The alien family gathered around the human, no longer seeing them as an outsider but as one of their own. The bond they shared was stronger than any barrier of species or race. It was a bond forged in battle, in shared triumphs, and in mutual respect. The galaxy had seen the human strength, but the family had seen something deeper. They had seen the heart of a being who could overcome anything. As the human gazed at the stars, they realized that they were not alone anymore. The galaxy was vast and filled with dangers and wonders, but it was also filled with potential allies, potential friends. The future was wide open, and the human knew that with their family by their side, they could face anything that came their way. They were not just a survivor anymore, they were a leader, a symbol of what humanity could become. The human turned back to the family, their heart full, their spirit unbroken, their eyes full of determination, and with quiet resolve, they spoke the words that had carried them through every trial. "This is just the beginning." And with that, the human stepped forward not as a child of Earth, but as a force that would shape the future of the galaxy, one challenge at a time. The end.